Howdy, friend. Welcome to Homegrown. I'm your host, R.P. Smith. It's been a week for ranch-related road trips. I made a run down to the southwest part of the state to borrow a couple bulls from my son Wyatt. The transition from AI to using bulls has not been as smooth as I'd hoped, but by having the group sorted into fairly small areas, I'm hoping for the best. One bull will be doing pretty well to make hamburger. Several others are lame. So it was appreciated when Wyatt offered to let me use a couple of his that were no longer needed in his herd. The next road trip was to Norfolk by way of Spalding and Meadow Grove, and included delivering 10 lugs of peaches, a little cattle trading, picking up a ram for the rapidly approaching sheep breeding season, and getting 3 tons of feed. Our outfit looked a little hillbilly, using wire panels to keep the ram away from the heifer and the heifer away from the feed. But it all worked, and we were able to get the ram and the heifer unloaded through the escape gate at the front of the trailer, and Caleb was around the next morning to help unload the feed off the back. So now we have the trailer ready to shift some ewes around before the family camping trip this weekend, and for picking up the rams from another neighbor's weed lot for pre-breeding testing on Monday. I also spent half a day watching a very capable crew repair a water line and replace a stock tank at the far corner of the ranch. It would be pretty difficult to get by these days without the equipment that we have available, and I'm sure grateful when the wheels keep turning and I still have the funds for the $3 gas to keep the motors humming. This seems like a great morning to share a road trip story that I hope my homegrown listeners in the West Point area will enjoy. I call this one The Ballad of Bud's Bunny. Near the east coast of Nebraska, in a town they call West Point, the Round Table back in the 70s was a quiet little joint where the local cattle feeders came to load up on caffeine. The world situation had the boys feeling pretty lean. Seems some mid-east desert dwellers that were really raising heck had gotten organized and formed a group they call OPEC. This was causing some distress on the cattle feeding scene because those camel jockeys jacked up the price of gasoline. How would these feeders fuel the caddy, let alone a cattle truck, when the price of go juice was headed to the north side of $1? And just when the boys thought things couldn't get much worse, one of their own became proactive, and it made the others curse. Bud went AWOL in his efforts to beat the fuel-spending habit when he snuck down to Omaha and bought a Volkswagen diesel Rabbit. As if it wasn't bad enough to be spending money outside of Cumming County, buying an undernourished foreign rig brought talk of bunny bounty. Carrots were left on his front seat. They called his home the hutch, mounted a set of rabbit ear antennae that Bud didn't like too much. But the hazing that was doled out from these men who smelled of silage was of very little solace when Bud was bragging about his mileage. He was a whiz at record-keeping, and would let his comrades know how that fuel-sipping jack had gotten him to Broken Bow, then turned around and brought him back with fuel in the tank, leaving his budget in the black and his money in the bank. Dark clouds were brewing over steaming coffee mugs as some fuming farmer feeders spawned a plot against old Bugs. The devious plan developed by the Round Table rank and file was to help that wascal wabbit reach for the extra mile. For coffee at the cafe, one guy each day was late, and while Bud was in bragging how his mileage was so great, his rabbit was being supplemented with fuel from the farm. They would add a couple gallon and could not see the harm in enhancing Bud's enthusiasm for his compact little mount. They even found someone to top his tank on the Ogallala route. So they were smiling with him as he proudly would expound, miles per gallon over 200 on his cattle by and round. Bud had swallowed the hook. His friends gave the line a jerk. Each morning at the round table one of them would go to work, making withdrawals, not deposits, from the rabbit's fuel tank. Bud's mood soon got blacker than the coffee that he drank. The despot of the feedlot had found a way to win. With diesel fuel on their breath and face split in a grin, Bud soon stopped driving the rabbit, mostly out of fear. He was going further on a gallon with his 100-horse John Deere. Bud no longer tipped the waitress, started passing on cattle deals, parked the rabbit in the shed, and drove an ATV that had 3 wheels. His pals tried to console him. It's not so bad as that. But the joke had gone too far when Bud registered as Democrat. This prompted a full confession. They invited Bud back to the fold. He admitted he had it coming and gladly came in from the cold. Friendships were renewed, but to avoid any future trap, Bud ordered his new Lincoln with a locking fuel cap. Thanks for riding along on Homegrown this morning. Hoping that the Lord blesses you real good today and that our happy trails cross again soon. I'm R.P. Smith.